Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today I want to introduce the next series reading vlog, and this one will be for the Between Earth and Sky trilogy by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is a 3-book series that I'm very excited to start reading, and I'm about to start my first solo travel trip to Mallorca, and my ideal vision for this is that I will read all 3 of these books while I'm on vacation, so I can really fly through them and soak up this story. So we'll see whether that actually works out. You will see that in a couple of minutes. I will have to wait for a couple of days to find out how that will go. But yeah, I'm going to take these books on vacation and hope to give you an exciting vlog. Now I will talk about a little bit more of what the series is about once I have started the first book, and the way this vlog works is that I will always update you after reading half of a book. So I will give you a 50% update and then a finished update for each of the 3 books. So get yourself a coffee, buckle in, get some tea, whatever you like, and then we will talk about this series and my experience with it. So I'm here from my vacation with the first update for Black Sun, which I can't hold up because I only have 2 hands. I'm sorry if I do look a little bit disheveled. I'm just doing a cheeky 5-kilometer walk in the hot sun. It is evening now, but it's still really warm, so yeah, just bear with me. But yeah, I'm bringing you to this beautiful area. I don't know if you can actually see the sea behind me somewhere, but it is behind me. Just trust me on that. So before I melt down completely, I just wanted to let you know that I'm now about halfway through Black Sun. A little bit less, but I wanted to do the update here because I'm fancy, so we're just going with it. And so far I'm really enjoying it. However, I do have my gripes with it a little bit. So let me first tell you a little bit of what this book is about. We are mainly following 3 perspectives. We do have a woman who is a priest for the sun god. She has basically the highest position in her faith thing, whatever, and religion. I think that's what it's called. And she is a person that is not very normal for this position because she isn't highborn, and so she is struggling a little bit. She wants to kind of reform her religion. However, people are not very happy with that. They're rather upset. In the first chapter that we see of this person, she's actually kind of being ritually murdered. So intrigued when we will go back to that. Then we have a guy who is told by his mother that he's supposed to become a god, and because of that his mother has prepared him. This perspective does have a little bit of body horror aspects to it, so would not recommend this book for the squeamish. There is quite a lot of horrifying imagery and stuff like that, so just letting you know. But yeah, basically he thinks he is becoming a god and he's ready to suffer quite a lot for that, so we are following his journey. Then we have the last woman who is kind of like a siren, kind of mermaid person. They're called Teak in this world, and she basically is a captain of a ship. When we meet her, however, she's in jail because she likes women and men. She likes everyone, and she was caught with the wife of someone and was put in jail. So she's let out, but she also has to do a job now because of that. So her job is to bring the supposed to be god to a city called Tova, where the other perspective is the high priestess. So basically this god is sent to destroy her faith, basically, I would say, because she did that in the past to that god. So there's a lot going on in this series. It has political machinations, but it also has some... Hi.
Gracias.
It also has some like religious stuff in it, and just in overall, it's just a lot to take in. And I'm not quite sure whether I'm completely like sucked into the story yet. I'm definitely intrigued to see what happens with all of these characters. However, I think one thing that I'm struggling with a little bit, the fact that the chapters are not like alternating between the perspectives. We can have like multiple chapters following the same perspective in a row. And for some reason, I don't like that. I don't know why. That's like really like such a pity thing to say. But like for some reason, it just doesn't really work for me. So yeah, I feel like we're spending like a little bit too much with certain perspectives at a time. And then also we are jumping a little bit around in time because we're basically leading up to this moment when the ship is supposed to arrive in Tova and it's supposed to bring about this thing, whatever happens. So yeah, we have like that timeline of like 20 days till that moment, but then we also go back in time. We see some of the past of our characters, and we also sometimes get perspective from other people. So far only one, and only once, so I'm not sure if that will happen again. But yeah, there seems to be quite a lot going on, and so I am intrigued to see more, but I'm also a little bit worried that this book isn't quite long enough for all that's going on. And I think that's also one criticism that I've heard, that maybe this book doesn't really manage to wrap everything up in the series. So we'll see. I'll continue reading and I'll keep you updated. So today's update isn't going to be quite as cute, but I have finished reading Black Sun and I'm here to give you my update. So this was a very high 5-star prediction for me, and unfortunately it didn't quite reach that. I ended up giving this one 4 stars and I still really enjoyed it. I really had a good time, and I think it is a very interesting concept for a fantasy book. It's just that it's not a new favorite, you know? And when you really expect that of a book, it can be a little bit sad if it doesn't live up to this expectation. However, I do want to talk a little bit more about this book to give you an indication of why this did not make it to my favorites list. So as I said in my last update, we do follow multiple characters, and I still struggled a little bit with the way that we switched the perspectives. I felt like in the second half it wasn't quite as annoying to me, but yeah, I just somehow I didn't love it in here. And I said also that there was like a 4th perspective where I wasn't really sure whether they would pop up again or not. And they do, but they, compared to the other 3, are just so much on the sidelines that I didn't really understand why they were there. And if they were supposed to be there the whole time, then why were they so on the sidelines? Like, why were there so few chapters from them? So that was a bit weird to me. And yeah, just like overall, the character work wasn't my favorite. I like really intricate character work, and I feel like in this one, the characters stay pretty much the way they are. They don't really learn a lot of new things. They don't really change. They have like a path and they're following that path and they're not diverting from that path. And that was just not interesting enough for me personally. I just like my characters to be more flawed, but also like a little bit more unpredictable. I feel like what happened in this book is so easy to predict from the beginning, or like very early on in the story. Once you have gathered like what's going on with these characters, it's like super easy to see what's going to happen in the end. So yeah, because these characters were just like set on their path and just had to walk it, I felt like also the intrigue was a little bit low for me, because I was like, yeah, okay, so it's gonna happen like this and then that is gonna happen and that's like the end result. Okay, so yeah, it wasn't like really intriguing enough for me to sink my teeth into these characters and also the plot. I think the world is absolutely fascinating. The world is definitely the thing I love the most about this one, because we are in this pre-Colombian inspired world where we do have these different like religions kind of that are warring, like these different gods and their like followers that are not really open warring, but like they have struggled in the past and they're still struggling for dominance in a way. But we also have the political machinations that we see far less of, unfortunately, because of who our characters are. They're much more involved in the religious aspects and not the political ones. And that's also something I was a little bit annoyed with, because we have one of our characters who is this like religious leader, but she's also a political figure, even so she doesn't really see it. And the way that she struggled with that and was like ousted because she did not play the political game, it was so annoying to me. So yeah, just not a favorite, but it was good, and I'm definitely going straight into the second book, and I hope to still finish that before I have to end my vacation. So we do still have a couple of days left, and that should be done, because I definitely want to know what happens next. I feel like now that we have reached this point, I'm like actually interested in what's going to happen, because yeah, the characters kind of have reached not necessarily like the end of their path, but like pretty important like crossroads, I would say. So let's see where they go from here. And I will talk about a couple of spoilers now. However, if you have not read this book, you can use the chapters to jump ahead to when I talk about the second book, spoiler free, so you can learn how I feel about that book as well. But for all the people who have read Black Sun, I want to go into a couple of spoilers, and I hope we can discuss a little bit, maybe also in the comments. But if you put any spoilers in the comments, make sure to clearly mark that so no one will read spoilers by accident. But yeah, in this book we follow mainly 3 perspectives, and I think my favorite one, and I'm going to butcher all of these names so horribly, I think is it something like Xiala? Xyla? I don't know. I'm gonna say Xiala. So she was definitely my favorite character in this one, because she is kind of like the mermaid character or the siren character. And I enjoyed her the most. The way we get introduced to her character, the way she ends up in jail, the way she is basically pansexual. I love her so much. And she is seen with like so much suspicion from the other sailors because of what she is, but they don't really understand what she is. So there's a lot of like hate thrown like towards her, but also just the way that people use her, like use her as something good, but then can turn on her so quickly and all of that. It was so interesting. I really loved her perspective, and I really loved reading her story, and she was like really fun. And I think she's also the character that changes a little bit throughout the story, because she actually develops feelings in a way that she really hasn't in the past. We know that she tries to live a life where she can easily move on, and obviously when meeting our other character, Serapio, she forms a bond with him that she can't easily move on from. So she has like the biggest development, I would say, in her character because of that bond that she establishes. And also she starts using her powers a lot more. At the beginning of the book, she doesn't really use them because people hate her kind so much. So I think that was also interesting to see. And I really loved the way that, she also isn't like really used to using the power a lot. So sometimes things don't go the way she thought, or it's just like stuff happens. Like, for example, when she's almost drowning and then turning into an actual kind of mermaid. She only wanted to survive, and to survive, that is what had to happen, but it wasn't like that she actually wanted to turn into a mermaid. Or when she is trying to get to Serapio in the end, and she is using this song, and like basically everyone around her freezes instead of just being calm. They completely freeze in place, and then they get trampled. So she has to adapt the song so the people actually calm down. So I think seeing her like kind of not being very used to these powers that she had her whole life was like very interesting, and I love her character a lot. Serapio, I think, is interesting as well. He's this guy who basically was told his whole life that he's just a vessel for this crow god. He doesn't really understand what it means. He doesn't really reflect on it. He doesn't really think about like vengeance and how yeah, it's not really clear whether he will be the hero or the villain. It really depends on how the story gets told. And I think especially with his whole like prophecy thing, the way that also we will talk about what's his name, Okoa. Yeah, we will talk about him in a second. But there's this one moment where he's like, yeah, never really thought about like what it actually means if this prophecy comes true, and it's like very similar with Serapio. However, he doesn't really care. Like when it comes to like killing hundreds of people, he doesn't really care that that might be a bad thing, and he doesn't really care about killing people. It doesn't really affect him in any way. So that's definitely interesting, and I think something I do enjoy in the depiction of something who is a god or thinks is a god, that they don't really actually care about people around them, because that's not kind of the logic they apply to the world. So I think that makes sense, but because of that, he also felt like very untouchable in a way, like unreachable. He does form this bond, and there is this like really hard like bathing scene. Like I just read like Spear Cuts Through Water, and that also has a really hard like bathing scene. So I don't know what it is with like bathing in fantasy books. Unfortunately, during my vacation so far, no hot bathing scene has occurred. But he does have this human side, but he doesn't let it shine. He doesn't let it grow into anything. So I'm intrigued to see where his character goes now, because obviously he has kind of fulfilled his prophecy, and we don't really know right now if there even is a Serapio left in there, or whether it's just a crow god. And yeah, I'm intrigued to see how that works out. And then, last but not least, not last but not least, but at the beginning we also have like the sun priest, Naranpa. I will call her Nara. Okay, so she is this priestess. She came from like very humble beginnings, but she got to be like the most important religious figure of this town. And so I think with her, I also struggled a little bit because, as I said in the spoiler-free part, the way she doesn't understand the political game that surrounds her like religious part, it just aggravated me. And she got played so hard so many times in this book, and the only time she actually tries to do something is when she goes to her little brother and the witch gives her the charm. That's like the only thing where she's like, okay, I think I gotta do something about this. But then she returns to her fucking room and just stays locked in there for a week, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you have to play the game, you have to find like support. And with the water strider woman, I don't know why they like didn't try to do something about it all. It was just so weird to me. And yeah, just the way she was like, yeah, but like I believe in all of this, so it's gonna be fine. It's not how the world works. Oh my God. That annoyed me so much, and I hated reading her chapters because of that. And also, we know where she ends up, basically. We have this chapter very early on where she's pulled out of the river, and we read about the witch, so we already know that she's not facing off against the crow god in the end. So it was so fucking obvious what was going to happen at the end. So I don't know what was the point. Like, I don't know. So I'm also intrigued to see where her way goes now, because she seems to still have maybe the sun god within her or something, but obviously still something has happened. And yeah, so it is intriguing to see where it goes next, but I found the way to where we are now very boring, because I knew where she would end up in the beginning. And yeah, I don't know. I just feel like some things weren't quite thought through with this one, or like done in the way that it actually really worked out well in the end. And then we have Okoa, and Okoa is kind of like the stepchild of the book. I don't know why. He only has a couple of chapters, but he does become a little bit more important towards the end of the book, and he's one of the crows. So basically he now has saved Serapio's body, or whatever it is. Maybe he is the crow god now. I don't know. So he will probably be more important in the next books, I guess. But it just felt so weird to me that he like pops up only once in the first half of the book. And I feel like to make him like a balanced character in the story, we would have had to just learn more about him and have his like parts being spread out a little bit more among the others. I just feel like it was a little bit too strategic with the way the chapters were done. It's like, okay, now we need this information from this character, so we have like 2 or 3 chapters from this character, and now we need the information from this character. It didn't feel like organic, like flowing the way the chapters were following each other, to me personally, and I just didn't love that, unfortunately. So overall, I'm definitely intrigued. All of these characters are on completely new path now that have changed dramatically from this book. And the one thing, this does have kind of like an explosive ending for sure, but you know how it's going to go, because there is so much, not only like foreshadowing, but like plain old telling you, like we know that, what is her name, Nara is not going to be there to be confronted by the crow. We know that Serapio is going to invoke the crow god and he's going to kill everyone. We already know so much of what is going to happen. So it just, while it was like explosive, it was not surprising. And that, I think, was really sad. But now I've rambled on for way too long. I'm gonna go and grab some dinner now, and I will be back hopefully very soon telling you about Fevered Star. Another update, and this time it is for the first half of Fevered Star, the second book in this trilogy. I have read this first half today and I am enjoying it. As I said in my previous update, what's interesting about the second book is that now kind of our characters are not on their like preset journeys anymore. They kind of have to find their own way now and struggle with the situation that none of them saw coming. So it's definitely more interesting because we don't really know what the characters will do. They have also kind of been a little bit reshuffled now, so we have characters working together or being smashed together that in the first book had nothing to do with each other. So that's quite interesting as well, because like some of the storylines were quite separate and they are getting more entangled now, which I think is quite interesting. Apart from that, we are pretty much following the same characters. However, we do have one new perspective. It is someone who already popped up in the first book, but we didn't have their perspective, so we have gained another one. And I just feel like with the length of the book, it's just a little bit too many perspectives, and I just don't care equally about the perspectives. And I think that's like my biggest gripe I have with this book. It doesn't do the thing anymore that I didn't like in the first book, where we had like multiple chapters from one perspective in a row. Now it does switch like with every chapter, so I do prefer that a little bit, but I think we just have too many perspectives. And again, this new one is very like unbalanced. It just pops up here and there, and I think it is like important for the storyline, because without that perspective we probably would be missing information that we need. But I still am not convinced that this is good storytelling, and it's just not a perspective I really care about, even though the character was intriguing in the first book. But now I'm like, yeah, but I don't know. So we'll see about that. But there's definitely like a bigger plot that is kind of unraveling now. I'm still a little bit annoyed with one of our characters because she is so clueless and she is trying to do better, but she's not there yet for me, to be honest. So I'm having fun, and I especially having fun with just like reading the series like so back to back with like so little breaks and just really immersing myself in it. But for a series that I had thought would be a 5-star read for like so long, it's still a little bit sad, I would say. So plot-wise, I don't really know what I can actually say. At the point where I'm at right now, something has happened that I didn't think would happen at the halfway point. There is like a development, like something to do with some of our characters that I thought would happen later on, but it already happened now. So there's definitely some movement there, and I feel like this book is like way less predictable than the first one for me. So yeah, the plot is just getting a little bit bigger, and there is more things like kind of unfolding that we could guess at but didn't really know about in this first book. So I am intrigued, and I think I will just talk more about it once I've finished it. So today at the beach I have finished reading Favorite Star, the second book in this trilogy, and I'm here to give you an update. I think I like this one just as much as I did the first book. I didn't really like it more, but I also wouldn't say that I liked it less. I think it is a little bit different, and the things I liked about it are a little bit different, but overall I would give this one 4 stars as well, maybe more like a 3.75 if you want to be nitpicky. But I definitely had a good time with this, but it's not like the hyped series that I was hoping for when I started reading this, so that's a little bit unfortunate. I also still don't know how I feel about this cover, but that's like besides the point. Yeah, so with this one, I think I talked about it a little bit yesterday already, and I don't really have like a lot of new things to say. I feel like what I said yesterday completely stands for the second half of the book. This one also didn't have like this very dramatic ending. It feels very much like a middle book, which I don't have a big problem with, but just beware that in this one you won't get like a super explosive ending. I think the stuff that happens at the end is still very interesting, but it's not like explosive in a way. It almost reminded me a little bit of a Robin Hood ending where you think the big battle is coming, and then she's like, but what if the people talked instead? So that was kind of funny, and I definitely appreciated the way that this wrapped up in a way, but it's not like explosive and fun if you're looking for that. Still not sure about that new perspective we get in here. Really did not need that, and especially with how things are going right now, I don't really need that, but whatever. I think that writing-wise, this one I liked a little bit better than the first book. However, there's something I wanted to mention in my last updates and always forgot, so I'm going to say it now. I realized that there is quite a few typos in this book, which really like frustrates me when that happens. And I think it is the edition, probably not the... I think if you have other editions, that might be fixed. But what really bothers me about these editions is that they do not come with a map. And I think that is actually criminal. Like, if you publish a series that comes with a map and you leave out the map, I think you're selling like not a complete product, and I hate that so much. Like, I'm so frustrated with that. And in the acknowledgments of the first book, it even talks about how beautiful the map is. Like, the author Rebecca Roanhorse says how she really likes the way it was designed and thanks the artist, and then the book does not come with a map. It is ridiculous, and I'm like really bothered by it, so I had to say that as well. So it might be if you have like different editions that this problem is not prevalent, but in my editions it definitely is, and I don't think I will keep these editions because of that, because like, for one, I'm not loving the series, but also it's not complete. Like, the books are missing something. So with that little rant out of the way, I would say that I'm definitely still intrigued very much to read the last book. The last book is significantly longer than the first two, which I don't always love, but sometimes happens. So we'll see how quick I can be with that. But I definitely think that our characters right now are on, again, completely different journeys from where we started the book. And it's like not very easy to see where they might go. I think in this one, some characters did actually grow quite a bit, while other characters don't really get a lot of attention. And I think especially if you are a fan of Serapio in the first book, you will not like the second book because he's hardly in it, to be fair. And just the way that this character arc of his is done, it just feels a little bit unsatisfying in the second book. So for me personally, he wasn't my favorite character, so I didn't mind so much. But I think if you're like really interested in his arc, then yeah, this just feels a bit besides the point. So I don't know. I can totally see why people don't love this, and I also don't love it, but I think for different reasons. So that's a little bit hard to talk about. But yeah, the characters are on like interesting trajectories now, and I'm intrigued to see how it all ends. I also love the cover of the third book. You know me, I love my like octopuses and squids, so the cover of the third book is like definitely my jam. I think I'm gonna leave it at that. We're intrigued to go into the final book, but yeah, this is just a series that is a little bit underwhelming for me. So now, before I talk about that final book, I thought we'd go into a couple of spoilers for Favorite Stars. So if you have read this book, let's discuss. If you have not, please use the chapters to jump ahead so you do not get spoiled, and we can discuss my spoiler-free thoughts of the final book. So with this one, I think we can start with the like new perspective that we get, and that would be Balam. And as I said, I think he is an intriguing character in the first book, but I just did not find him very intriguing now that I'm reading about him in the second book. And I think the main thing about that is that in the first book, you're really wondering, like, what is his role in all of this? Like, why does he do the things he's doing? And he just seems like a very intriguing like person of power. But once we're starting to be in his head and we see like the full scope of what he's trying to do with all of like the dream walking and all of his like strings that he's trying to hold, I'm not interested in that at all. He is set up to kind of become the villain in the third book, or at least part of it, because he really tries to shatter this world and to unleash like magics like no one has ever seen, basically, and he's prepared to like kill millions and whatever. But I just don't care. I don't know, and the book doesn't really give me anything to care about him. And I think that for me personally, I have this sometimes where when we get like the villain POV in a fantasy series, it does not work for me. I did not like it in the Devabad trilogy. I did not like it in the Drowning Empire series. So this one also feels a little bit like one of those series where it does not work for me with a villain POV. And there's just specific things I just don't like about it, especially when I feel like it is taking stuff away that I could be exploring with like other characters and be shocked, but then I already knew about it because I have this villain POV, and I just don't like that. So him, I would completely scratch out of the book if I could, but we'll see where that goes. Then we obviously have our characters from the first book. As I had predicted, Okoa does become more important in this one, and I think it is interesting to see his journey because he definitely is one of the characters who has a lot of like internal struggle with doing the right thing and what could the right thing even be in his situation and stuff like that. So I definitely think that having him being more important is great in this book, and I really enjoyed seeing his journey and seeing his struggles. I still think that he should have been set up better in the first book, so we care even more about the things that are important to him, the kind of pain he also suffered, because like especially with the death of his cousin and the betrayal of his cousin that he learns about right before he dies and all of that. I think that could have been explored a lot more, but it is quite rushed, and because we don't have like a good character setup of him, it doesn't like really have that impact that it could have had, because this is a character who just learned like the most horrible thing and then saw the person responsible killed in front of him, and it's someone he trusted and loved his whole life. So that was like a missed opportunity for me personally. Then we have Nara, Nara is definitely on an interesting path as well. And again, she also loses someone who's very near and dear to her heart when her brother gets murdered. And that one I did not see coming, I have to be honest, even though we do have the prophecy that he is about to die. But I really thought that we were out of those waters when it happened. So that was definitely an interesting move. And I think that she is really growing in this book, and especially the second half of this book, and this moment when she goes to face the crow god again, and she decides, instead of like killing him or fighting to the death, she's trying to make a plan for them both. That was definitely unexpected and something I very much appreciated, and I'm very intrigued to see her further journey. I think that she is a character that, while I'm still a little bit like annoyed with her in this book, I think that she is growing up very fast, and she also learned to see what her like struggle is, what her issue is, like why she does not succeed. And that is the part that I found so frustrating with her, that now she's coming to the conclusion herself that there is something that she does kind of wrong for her path, basically, and she's trying to acknowledge that and work around it. And I think the decision she makes at the end to leave her city to the crow god, because she knows, or she feels that he's what the city needs right now and not her, I think that is such an interesting choice. And now she's trying to go to this like valley of the gods, and I'm like very interested to see what she finds there. But yeah, definitely, I think she is the most interesting character in this book, and I loved seeing her arc, and I can't wait to follow the rest of that. I think the whole thing with her powers and how she discovers them, she is a little bit outmatched with the Crow God, because like he was trained his whole fucking life to be the vessel, while Nara, she doesn't know what she's doing, basically. So I think it is a good thing they didn't have like this big battle scene. I'm still not sure how I feel about it. Then we have Celia, right? Ugh, me and names, I'm so sorry. For her storyline, I was a bit bored, to be honest, with this one. I think that I still love the idea of the teak, and I definitely think it's interesting the way that she is suffering because she's on land so much in this book. I think the way that this was brought into this was quite interesting. The whole revelation about what she did in her like home island, that she thinks she can't return, wasn't that shocking. It was actually kind of like what you would expect she did. So I was like a little bit like, yeah, okay, I guess we could have learned that a little bit earlier, because who's really shocked by what it was. But yeah, that she's traveling with Iktan is quite interesting. However, I just feel like in this one, she's the decision she makes all makes sense, but I feel like her character is like really just drudging along, and while she's trying to have some like character growth moments, they just do not come across, especially when it comes to her drinking, which she has been like very much drinking a lot in the first book, and now she's kind of getting away from that, but also starting to analyze why she even does it, and how that is also reflected in her magic. And I said in my last like update after the first book that I loved that her magic isn't like perfect, that her magic has consequences that she doesn't see coming, or that are yeah, just not great. And that is explored a little bit more in this one as well. But I just feel like she is more like there to move the plot along and to show us what is happening with the gold eagles. So I felt like that was a little bit like just not the full potential, you know what I mean? It was just not the full potential. And speaking of potential, we have Serapio, and in this book really Serapio does not really live up to the potential here, because he is very conflicted right now, and in some chapters he's allowed to show that a little bit, because there is still like the Serapio we know inside of him. However, he also is the crow god now, but the crow god has also left him to fight the sun. So it's all like very complicated, and I feel like for the struggle that he should have, we see not enough of it. And especially with the way the story also ends, where he builds his like palace and changes his like people to have like their weird armor and stuff. I don't know, but I just felt like this whole like transformation of him at the end was a little bit like too out of the blue, and I don't know. I'm definitely intrigued to see how this character will develop in the last book, if we will get more of his like humanity glimpses again, because for most of this part he's definitely on the god side and we don't really see any struggle within him. He feels very cold and very like, I don't know, like resigned to his fate. And also this idea of like he had this like big thing to do, he had his purpose, and then he does it and he kind of fails. And he should be struggling with that, but we see none of it really. And I thought that was like very disappointing. As a like character driven reader, I wanted to be there. I wanted to see all of his thoughts about that. So that's it for the second book from me, and I'll talk to you again when I'm halfway through Mirrored Heavens. So, as you can see, I'm back home and I'm also now halfway through Mirrored Heavens, and it's time for another update. I started reading this on the plane home, and I must say that I have really been struggling with the first half of this book a lot. So it took me quite a while, like a lot longer than I thought it would take me, but we're finally here to kind of talk about this a little bit. Now, in this one, we are still following everything that has been going on in the second book, and also like the consequences of the first book. Obviously, it's a sequel, so I can't really talk about like specifics here, but I will try to like do some vague explaining. So in this book, what makes it difficult for me to read is that we do have a couple of things that I just really do not enjoy in my fantasy books, like just some tropes and things that I don't like. So it has been like very slow going. I think we're going into a better direction now because some of these things are being resolved and we're moving on. So I hope that the second half of this book won't be quite so much of a struggle. Now, one thing I really don't like about the first half of this book is what happens to the teak, especially right at the beginning of the book. It's just something that just the way it is done, it isn't my favorite. I really don't like kind of like overpowered villains when the situation is like very difficult and you can't really tell how the characters will ever get out of that. I really much prefer it when the playing field is kind of leveled and everyone has to be like smart and make good moves. And I feel like what is happening to the teak in this first part is like very much this thing where there is like this one presence that is like so overpowered that they don't really have like a lot they can do about it, and it's like just very cruel and horrific. And I just don't like reading about that stuff. Like, I know it happens, I know it's realistic, but it's just not enjoyable for me to read about it. So whenever we would get to a teak chapter, I put the book down and didn't want to continue reading. So actually what I did to make this to make it through that basically is that I would always play One Day in The Sims and then read a chapter to kind of get me to not just drown in the Sims hole and actually read my book as well. So that worked out quite well yesterday, and I did make quite a bit of good progress. Now, another thing I really don't like, and I might have said that in my last update for the second book as well, is villain POVs. I just don't like to know what the villain is doing and what they're plotting. I feel like it takes away a lot of the story, a lot of the surprises, because obviously our main characters don't know what the villain is doing. Sometimes they don't even know who the villain is, but we know all about it. And so it makes for a very boring story for me, and I just don't really appreciate that. It's something that happened in the Devabad series as well as the Drowning Empire series. It's just not for me. So having that in here as well, it's just boring. Then we also do get, suddenly, I must say, some kind of flashback scenes from a certain character that give us more information about something that happened in the past. That is completely unnecessary, and especially with the thing that just happened now at the halfway point between Serapio and one other character that I don't want to spoil, but it's like a very heartfelt thing, something that really also kind of could heal something in him, but it doesn't. But like this whole thing, we know what's going on. Like it hasn't been like said on page, but it's so obvious from those chapters and from like stuff like hints that we get that we already know what's going on in this. And I said that about the first book as well, is when I see there is like this prophecy and I know where it's going from like a mile away because there's no subtleness to the hints. I don't enjoy that. So yeah, we know what's up with that, and so it kind of loses the surprise factor when it actually, like, when the characters actually learn about this. We will not be surprised. We have known for almost the whole book. So I just don't love that. And with some of these characters, especially with Serapio, let's just stay with him for a second here. He is kind of like the main character of the series, so I don't think it's a spoiler that he's still around. But he's just not the same person as he was in the first book. Like, he's completely not the same person. You would not recognize him at all if you didn't know it was the same person. And maybe it makes sense with the way that things happened up until this point. But it's just not... I like my intricate character work, you know that. And that's just not it. That's just not it. If I have like one character in book 1, and then he's completely different, like basically absent in book 2, and then completely different in book 3, it doesn't work for me. So yeah, unfortunately, this is a little bit of a fail for me. Like, even coming from book 2, this is not going really well. Let's just say that. So we do have like things going on now at the halfway point, where I hope that a lot of this will get resolved. What I do enjoy is Nara's storyline. She just had kind of like a reunion with a character, and that I 100% love where that is going. I love that. I still feel like we get even more perspectives in this final book that we didn't have before. And I don't like it, and I don't want it, and it's just, it kind of feels like, we just make more characters our POV so we can see all of the parts moving, but I don't always need to see like all of the parts moving. Maybe, I don't know, but yeah, we'll see. I will finish this book, but I'm definitely not loving this one, and I hope that the finale now will be great. I hope that some of our characters will get what they deserve, in the good and the bad way, and I'm definitely intrigued to see some of these character reunions. Now, saying that, the like kind of romantic aspect that has been going on since the first book, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it at all, and I'm intrigued to see how that ends, but I do have a very strong suspicion how that might end, and I don't like it, and I'm not buying it. So that's my thoughts for now. I don't want to babble on too long, but I have been struggling, you guys, and I had to let you feel a little bit of my struggle as well. So let's finish this book off, and I'll talk to you when I'm done with this series. So here we are, and I have finished reading MHeavens, and with that we have reached the last update of this vlog. And so let me tell you how it went with the finale of this series. In the end, I am going to give this book 4 stars as well. I think this is my least favorite of the series, but then it also is the only one I was not literally reading on vacation on the beach where everything is better. So take this with a grain of salt. As I had told you in my last update, with this one I definitely had to cheat myself a little bit to get through the first half of the book, or maybe the first third or so, before it reached a point where I was interested again in what was going on. Now, the second half definitely had a lot more interesting stuff going on as you're reaching the kind of climax, the final battle of this series. So I definitely didn't struggle that much with that part of the book, and also I feel like I had reached a mindset where I was in the mood for reading again. So I definitely read this second half of this book so much quicker. However, still this one does do a lot of things that I do not enjoy. A lot of kind of tropes or story arcs that I don't love. Also with the ending, there is this one thing at the end that I always find super irritating, and I'm not going to say it because it would be a spoiler, but just know that this thing bugs me so much. We'll get to the spoilers in a second. So overall, I did have a good time with this book. I would say it is a good fantasy series. It is just not one that specifically targets the things that I like in my fantasy books. So this is much more just driven by the world and the magic, and exploring kind of the world and the gods and all of these powers that our characters are gaining, and where these powers come from, kind of what's going on with that. It is much less about having actual human kind of characters that go through character development. Not that these characters aren't changing, but I feel a lot of their changes have so much to do with the magic, and that they're just getting more powerful, but also paying more and more of a price for their magic, that this isn't realistic character development in a sense, because it is so tied up with their powers and the magic that they have. So I, just for me personally, prefer a much more human look at things. That's why I adore stuff like the Radiant Emperor duology, because these characters, while they might have some powers or some special skills, they are just in their core flawed humans, and they have to deal with that. And while these characters are also completely flawed, as I said, a lot of that is tied up with the gods, with their powers. So it's just not something that I personally adore, but if you like that kind of stuff, then I think this could be a spectacular series for you. With the plot as well, it's just I don't know, sometimes it felt a little bit meandering, especially because in this final book we do kind of have a prophecy again, and it is not all of the plot is tied up with it, but in a way all of the plot is tied up with it. And if you're not completely zoned out of the story, you can definitely see a lot of the things that are integrated into that prophecy, and how things will have to work out, and what it means, and where Rebecca Roanhorse is probably going with a lot of things. And I have realized I just don't like that. I don't like it. I don't like kind of prophecy the way it is done in this series, where I just feel a lot of what the characters go through is just so obvious. And yeah, that was a little bit frustrating for me as well. So in the end, this is just not a series for me specifically, but I can still acknowledge that this is a good fantasy series. I'm still really mad that my editions don't even include the maps, which I think is just so dumb. So I'm not going to keep these. I will definitely get rid of these editions, because it's not a story I want to reread, and also it's not even the full books. So there are like very pretty special editions. I don't know if it was like broken binding or what, but I have seen on Discord that there are currently like special editions of the series coming out. So if you are interested, maybe those would be a better bet than these like cheapish paperbacks. I mean, the good thing is that they weren't so expensive, but if they don't come with the maps, I'm just disappointed. So I think my final verdict for the series is it's good, it's solid. If this is the kind of fantasy you're into, then I think you can have a lot of fun with that. But for me personally, there was just too much that is not how I like it to be. Too many like tropes that I didn't enjoy, especially as I said in this final book. And just like I was just lacking that sweet character development, those intricate like relationships between the characters. I was lacking that. So not for me, but still, I'm glad I read it. So for everyone who has not read this series or this final book yet, I will say goodbye to you now because I do want to go into a couple of spoilers. But if you haven't read this book yet, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciated it. I hope you had a fun time. I hope you now know whether you want to pick up the series or not. Definitely let me know in the comments whether you will. But for everyone who has read MHeavens, let's go into a couple of spoilers right here at the end. Now, there is a lot going on in this book, and I don't want to touch on every single thing, but I want to touch on the things that I complained in the spoiler-free part a little bit more, so you know where I'm coming from. So first of all, one thing that like from the beginning just was not for me is what happens to Teak. In the beginning of the book, we start out with Xiala back in Teak, and I felt like it was a little bit sad that we didn't even see her like homecoming, because for her it is such a big deal. She hasn't been home for so many years. She has tried to make her own life, but always under the premise that she would not be allowed to go home. And so for her to return to Teak would have been like something I wanted to see. But when we get there, basically, she's already there. We are meeting her again at the beginning of the book, and she is trying to figure out these powers that she seemed to have in the previous books. And it's not going that great. And then the ships arrive immediately and they basically get conquered. And I hated every single second of that. I thought that this Toon woman could be like a very interesting character because she is basically like the only woman in this position in her city or her like area of the world where usually the men rule. So she is an exception to that. And for some reason that never really is explained that well, she is set on destroying the only area of the world that is led by women. No, that's not true. Like, Tova is also ruled by women, if you want to say it like that. But, like, Teak is an island of only women. And so this woman who always had to, like, fight against men for her position to be accepted by these men, she's like, you know what? Let me take this land from these women. I didn't love that. So she gets there, she's like a horrible tyrant, she threatens the children, so she's like built up to be this like terrible villain. And I hated every second of it. I just really didn't want to read about that. I didn't want to read about her like being so terrible. And I mean, yeah, some people are just evil, and that's fine. And they can be in my books, I don't mind. But I think the way that this character we never got like a real feel for who she is and what she wants. And we first see her through Balaam's eyes as kind of like an ally, and then quickly we see her as this villain. So it just felt so pointlessly cruel, and I just really didn't didn't like that. And I just don't like about kind of this like power imbalance where like one group of people has like so little power, and in the grand scheme of things, with like the few chapters we have from this point of view, they get this to turn around quite quickly, but it still takes a lot of the book because we're in like different perspectives and stuff like that. So I don't know, it just wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. So I complained about that a lot in my head. Then we move like along, like we have like other stuff going on, like the whole like matron Okoa, like will they kill Serapio, will they not, whatever. Like I didn't really care about that. I don't know, like Okoa is one of those characters that was just done dirty in this whole series. I think that he could have been a great character. I think if we had gotten more of him in the first book and he wouldn't have only been there for like, I don't know what, if his struggles weren't just like, he's like one of those characters who just runs into a wall like so many times in this series, and it was immensely frustrating for me. And then the ending, when he gets stabbed in the end and he dies, I was like, this character deserved so much better. He's like literally the only good person in this whole series and you kill him off. Like, okay, it's a choice. It's a choice. Switching maybe to the second nicest person, I would say, which is Nara. Now, Nara definitely changed a lot throughout these books, and I did enjoy her romance part in this. Like, I really love when she gets reunited with Iktan. Their romance, I bought from the first second. I thought they really deserved each other. It was so, like, how she searched for Iktan and healed Iktan and all of that. I love that. I love that. And yeah, the way they just then started traveling together and they went to like the god graveyard thing and all of that. Loved it. And for what? And for what? Like, what did Nara achieve in the end? Nothing. She achieved absolutely nothing. And I don't know why. I don't know why. What was the whole point of that? I don't know. She didn't help anyone with that. She just made things worse in the end. She burned down her fucking city. Why? Why though? And then to learn that her attack on Tova didn't even kill Esa, I wanted to scream. I really wanted to scream. I don't know. So yeah, that whole thing, like, I enjoyed the romance, but the whole, like, she's starting to dreamwalk and all that came with it up until, like, the end where she's, like, literally asleep and we never learn whether she will wake up. It's awful. It's just awful. I don't know, like, I would love to know how other people feel about her storyline, because I feel like after Okoa, she was done the dirtiest. Like, Okoa was definitely done the dirtiest. But then Nara is next. I don't know. So, yeah. This is supposed to be kind of the big love story of Xiala and Serapio, I guess. Like, from the ending, that's what I would guess. And, oh, how I hated the ending. Oh, I can't even. But let's talk a little bit more about Xiala. I was really glad that she, like, managed to get rid of the people. She, like, freed her people, and then she goes on this, like, revenge quest. And then another thing I really, really hate. Is the deadly Kraken. I'm sorry. But it is so overdone. It is so, like, you know, I love squid. I love octopuses. And reading about this it's just like reading about, like, how sharks just always eat people. You know, it's just like, can't we do something new, something different? I don't know. So yeah, did not enjoy the whole, like, Kraken thing. Even though the cover still gorgeous, but, like, the story That, no. Did not like that. But however, she turns into a mermaid. Everything goes well. She gets her revenge. Kind of, not really. We all know what happened to that toon person. So yeah, I don't know, like the whole like love story situation, like these characters have been apart for like two books, and they meet each other and they're just horny. They are just horny, and they get it out of their systems very quickly. Well, not quickly for them, but quickly for the amount of pages it takes. So horny, like, action happens, and then we get to the final battle, and obviously, like, she uses the dagger, she kills the god, the crows fly away, and I'm like, Lord, let her not be pregnant now, because I hate that so much. I hate that trope so much. I'm sorry for people who have lost a loved one and are very happy that they had a child with that person. But Xiala and Serapio literally had like one day and they made a child. I mean, yeah, it can happen, but I hate that trope. I hate it. And then he's not even dead. So what was the whole point? You know what I mean? But yeah, I can't even explain to you why I hate that so much, but I really do. Like, I think it is like this whole idea of like the DNA of my lover is still here. I think it's just like so weird. It's just weird. But okay. Maybe because, you know, I'm a child of divorced parents, so all my parents ever saw in me is all the flaws of their ex-partner. So I don't believe that whole crap of like, oh, I see in you all that I loved about him. Whatever. I'm cynical. I don't love it. So yeah, the whole thing, I don't know. Like, this book really tested me in a way, and it was still good. And that's the weird thing, that there is so much about this story that I didn't love, but in the end, I still had a good time reading it. I'm not mad that I read it, even though I might sound like a little bit negative right now. I still had a fun time. I still had a good time. I don't want to read it again, but I would definitely read more by this author, just because like her writing was good. And she does have this like more paranormal series that for now she's not continuing on with, so that's keeping me back, because as you know, I like my series finished. So we'll see. Maybe I will try that one day, but no promises yet. But I'm definitely open to read more by Rebecca Roanhorse. Not mad I read this one. I think she's a good author. I think if you like, these are like very specific things to me, things that I didn't enjoy. So you could feel completely different about that, and that's completely fine, because what I'm talking about right now is just taste. It's not craft, it's just taste. And that's why I still gave these books 4 stars, and that's why I still had a good time reading this, even though it wasn't like my favorite. Okay, I think I have babbled on enough now. I will let you go. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you had a fun time. I have a ton of series reading vlogs out, so there is a whole playlist. If you want to see more, definitely check that out as well. But yeah, if you have read the series, let me know what were your thoughts. If you're trying to share any spoilers, definitely make sure that it is marked clearly so no one gets spoiled by accident. And yeah, with that, I just have to say, have a nice day, and I'll talk to you very soon. Bye!